From Castle Rexworth and the Rexworth Estates, I bid you good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are and whenever you are. My name is Rexworth, Lord Rexworth, and we are also joined tonight from Zoe the Demon Fox's realm. And here she is, Zoe the Demon Fox. Welcome back.
Hello, hello, hello.
We hope that all of you are having a lovely evening. I do apologize for our tardiness. Normally we start about an hour earlier on the weeknights, but had some business to attend to before that. But here we are, and we're going to be continuing our live reading ASMR of Zoe's book, The Realm, A Tale of Blood and Souls. Will we get through the entire thing tonight?
No.
You don't think so?
No.
Okay.
I know we're on chapter 46, but we tend to read about 7 or 8 chapters at a time.
All right, then. Fair enough. Fair enough. Right. Zoe is tagged in stream title on my end. I imagine that she's tagged me on hers.
Yep.
So please do make sure that you're following both of us. Keep in touch when we stream next. All of my links are available at lordrexworth.com. That is lordrexworth.com. You can find Zoe the Demon Fox here on Twitch. Also, VODs uploaded to YouTube and twitter.com/Zoe the Demon Fox. Hello, Light
And
Chow.
if
Welcome
you
in.
needs any other links, zoethedemonfox.card.com.
Yes, that's right. Got a card page. Yes, so please do check us both out. Follow us across all platforms, and stay in touch with us as we continue providing you entertaining and unique content like this. So yeah, without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. We had stopped at chapter 46, simply titled Madness. Styx's eyes slowly opened. Actually, hang on. I need to do something real quick.
Get your tea.
I do need to sip my tea. I came prepared. No, I actually need to hit the record button on Unify. There we go. Right. Chapter 46. Madness. Styx's eyes slowly opened and she let out a yawn, pressing her hand into her pillow. It was surprisingly soft and round, kind of big. Styx's eyes shot open as she realized she had been sleeping on Evelyn's chest. The Fallen continued to sleep, laying on her back with one arm around Styx. Both of them were lacking a few articles of clothing, especially Evelyn, as the Fallen Angel was missing a shirt. Both of them were underneath Styx's trench coat, as if it were a blanket. Styx did not want to move and wake Evelyn up, but at the same time, the Watcher began to breathe faster, trying to control her emotions. She wasn't even sure why she was upset, but in the end, she started crying. Evelyn's eyes opened and let out a groggy yawn, looking down at Styx.
What's the matter? Nothing.
Styx tried to calm herself down, sitting up and grabbing her coat, looking for her pants.
You should put your shirt on.
Styx slipped off the couch while Evelyn sat up and stretched before grabbing her shirt off the floor and putting it back on.
You promise you're alright?
Styx had stepped away from the couch and froze with one leg in her pants, the other raised and slid halfway into the other pant leg.
Salem.
You should tell her the truth. Styx frowned at the shadowy silhouette that had manifested in the corner and was staring at her.
Styx, you're shaking.
Evelyn stood up and took a worried step closer. Tell?
Shut up!
Styx shoved her foot down into her pants and gripped her head for a second, breathing heavily. She gritted her teeth, desperately trying to regain control of her emotions. Evelyn recoiled from the outburst.
Wait, no, not you, Ev.
More tears slid down Styx's cheeks before she shook her head slightly.
I just need a second. Take your time. I'll be here, okay?
Styx nodded before stumbling deeper into her cabin and vanishing into the bathroom. Her hands gripped the edges of the dark marble sink as she stared into the warpstone-lined mirror, breathing heavily.
I'm fine. Everything is fine.
Her grip tightened.
I'm the Queen of Souls, damn it. Little insanity never killed anyone.
She turned on the sink and leaned down, splashing water into her face and cleaning up.
Everything will be okay.
As she turned off the sink and looked up again, she froze. Her reflection grinned at her. Styx was too scared to move. Before her eyes, her reflection slowly reached up, slipping fingers into the sides of its mouth and pulling hard, stretching the mouth into a terrifyingly wide smile as the eyes blackened to empty voids. It laughed loudly, the very flesh seeming to start melting as the smile continued to stretch higher and higher. Styx finally screamed and nearly ripped the door off the hinges as she fled into the bathroom. As she fled the bathroom, as she glanced over her shoulder, she ended up ramming into Evelyn, who quickly wrapped her in a hug.
Whoa, Styx, what's wrong?
Styx held tightly to her friend, one hand gripping a rotted feather. Even in a decayed state, the feathers on Evelyn's wings were exceedingly soft. Tell her the truth. The truth. The truth. The truth.
The truth. The truth. The truth. The truth. The truth. The truth.
The shadow was right behind her. It would not shut up. Styx pressed her face into Evelyn's shoulder.
Fuck, that's a missed opportunity. We should have read it at the same time. They won't stop. Ev, please help me.
Evelyn hesitated, then kissed Styx's forehead and gently led her to the bedroom, taking care to keep Styx's face pressed into her shoulder so Styx would not be able to see whatever hallucinations were plaguing her. Once in the bedroom, Evelyn closed the door and the pair sat down. Evelyn began gently stroking Styx's long grey hair.
Whatever you saw, you're safe, Styx, okay? It can't hurt you. I won't let it hurt you. I'll stay by your side.
A metal creak echoed around the room as Phobos manifested in the corner. He wheezed softly as he clanked over to them and laid a few soul contracts on the bed.
Queen hungers. Feed her.
With that, he vanished back into the shadow. Evelyn was confused but picked up one of the contracts. Styx looked at it for a moment, but as soon as Evelyn held it out, Styx snatched it. Purple and green flame ignited and burnt the paper to nothing rapidly. As soon as it was burned away, Styx fell back onto the bed, breathing heavily. She hadn't realized how hungry she was until that moment, but now that hunger had faded, she gasped. Evelyn looked back at her with a slight concern.
You okay?
Styx looked at her hands.
I ate the soul. You what?
Styx blushed and turned away, embarrassed. Evelyn stood up and sighed, letting out a soft giggle.
What am I gonna do with you? If that solves your hunger, I take it you're full.
Evelyn could sense Styx's embarrassment increase as the watcher nodded her head slightly.
I'll put the rest over on the dresser for later.
Styx closed her eyes and let out a sigh, but opened them again as she felt Evelyn's presence in front of her. The fallen crouched down to be closer to eye level.
Hey, Styx. I'm at Warpstone. Do you...
Styx's arm lunged out and gripped Evelyn's hand. The watcher was shaking again as she sat up, still holding Evelyn's hand.
Please don't leave me here alone. Styx, I'll make it quick, okay? I promise. Besides, you have Phobos.
As if on cue, the metal puppet stepped out of the shadows and creaked over to the side of the bed, collapsing down into a sort of rest position. Styx hesitated before slowly letting go and pushing herself to the middle of the bed. Evelyn stood up.
I'll be okay. I think. This room would be your safe space, okay? Keep that in your mind. It should help. And if it doesn't, Phobos is literally right there.
Evelyn smiled mischievously as she walked as close as possible and grabbed Styx's hand. Evelyn slipped the hand down her shirt, giving Styx a feel. The Watcher did not pull back at first, but after a few moments she violently pulled away.
What the hell was that about, Evelyn?
The Fallen laughed loudly.
A distraction. If the monsters start getting you down, just think of that feeling.
Styx had no reply. It seemed like a fairly decent idea.
Fine. Please don't just make me touch you out of the blue like that again, though. No promises. I'll be back as soon as I can. Be safe, Styx.
Styx nodded and watched Evelyn walk out of the room, hearing the front door close a few moments later. Styx sighed and adjusted herself, laying on her stomach by the bed's edge, so she could reach down and gently pat Phobos's burlap-covered metal head. It helped that she wasn't alone, suffering these stupid hallucinations by her lonesome.
Hey, Phobos.
The Saint of Fear let out a questioning wheeze.
I need a favor.
Chapter 47. A Trick of the Dark. Oedipus walked through a forest of blight trees, utterly alone. She wrapped her cloak tighter around her shoulders.
I forgot how big the Elder Circle is. Where's this damn cabin?
She glanced to the side, noting the river of souls still meandered nearby.
Almost there. Got to be.
Oedipus reached up to one of her white horns, gently touching a small black keepsake tied to it.
What will I tell them?
A branch snapped and Oedipus whirled around, unsheathing Deceit with one hand and manifesting a purple orb in the other. She stood almost on her tiptoes, her dark yellow eyes peering into the darkness around the trees, a darkness that increased as Lunatus Solaris faded with the night hours. After a few moments, Oedipus lowered her sword and sighed.
I'm just imagining things.
She turned back in the direction she was going, then suddenly let out a scream. A gloved hand quickly covered her mouth as a cracked and ever-smiling mask stared at her. A chuckle emanated from it. Oedipus began to fight back until Cagliostro shushed her and pointed at the codex in a small sling on his belt. "Hello, my dear. It is truly a shame your home burnt down. Nox and I were worried sick about what had become of you." Oedipus tried to control her emotions, but began to shake anyway. Cagliostro gently nudged her sword with his leg, and she dropped it to the ground, the purple orb in her other hand dissipating. Cagliostro took a step back and crossed his arms.
Well, what do you want, Keg?
He chuckled again. "You got me curious, schemer. What mighty plan is in the works that you are using your human form and walking along the river? The only thing out here is the home of the upstart." Cagliostro paused, then began laughing loudly as Oedipus fidgeted, her eyes desperately flitting around, looking for an escape. I see. I see. Cagliostro became deadly serious. "You know, Oedipus, I cannot abide turncoats. It's a dirty business, and I cannot say I find joy in killing a beauty such as yourself. Schemer, but..." Oedipus fell to her knees, gritting her teeth, struggling to keep her emotions in check. She had no out.
I don't want to die here.
Cagliostro laughed again as he took his codex and began flipping through the pages. "My dear, you should have considered such things. Surely you knew I would track you down. Perhaps once your soul crosses over, this nightmare called reality will finally be over." A soft wheeze echoed along the wind, and Cagliostro let out a sigh. "Phobos, is that you?" The wheezing intensified and combined with a maniacal laughter. The metal puppet crawled slowly down a blight tree, head bent upward. at a 90-degree angle to stare at the masked demon. Oedipus looked up and gasped softly. Cagliostro took pause. His eyebrow twitched beneath his mask. You finally found your tongue, Scarecrow. Instead of using a vessel to speak through, the metal jaw of Phobos's puppet was opening and closing, although the sound still emanated from the core of the puppet's center.
Maybe I have a listener.
Cagliostro's fists clenched. How? Phobos's head turned towards Oedipus.
The nightmare seeks the schemer. Consider yourself lucky, Cagliostro.
No, she's mine, you damnable... Huh? Two shadowy figures had manifested behind Oedipus and grabbed under her arms. She was confused for a few seconds before she began to scream as they pulled her, kicking and screaming into the river. Cagliostro felt a bead of sweat go down his cheek, but he shrugged it off. You're simply making my job easier, puppet. Farewell, after you ilsku, yoftful. Cagliostro laughed as Phobos's puppet crumpled to the ground and melted to nothingness. But a moment later, a metal talon spun him round, wrapped around his neck, and slammed him against a tree. Phobos cackled and wheezed.
You can't kill a dream.
The shadows seemed to shoot towards Phobos as his cackles grew louder and louder, before with an ear-piercing screech he vanished. Cagliostro fell to the ground, covering his head for a few moments. As he sat up, he noticed the light had changed to full moonlight. He snarled. That damned puppet pulled me into this nightmare world. He stood up and brushed himself off with a sigh. No point staging a one-man assault on the upstart, especially not now. He looked down the path. Your time will come, puppet. Phobos threw Oedipus out of his shadowy rift in front of the cabin's door. She quickly got to her feet, but sheathed her sword.
Phobos, why? Why did you save me?
Phobos tilted his head.
Oh, right. No vessel.
She cleared her throat.
Well...
The door swung open and Styx stood in the doorway, sighing in relief.
I thought I could sense a soul. Are you okay, Erebus?
The deception demon stood confused for a few moments.
You... sent Phobos for me? I've tried to kill you, so did Zoe. That doesn't mean I hold it against her. I could sense both you and Cagliostro out in the forest. I wasn't sure of your intentions, but seeing you now, I take it you abandoned him. Your human form is kinda nice. Thank you. You're right.
Oedipus grasped her arm nervously.
I should...
Oedipus stopped and took a deep breath, then stood up straighter.
I want to help you, Styx, if you'll let me. I know that I can't be trusted, but...
Styx grasped Oedipus's hand and pulled her into the cabin.
Have a seat. I'll make us some drinks. We can all talk about this together when everyone gets back.
Oedipus hesitated, glancing back at Phobos, as he followed them inside and crumpled into the corner. Oedipus sat herself hesitantly on the couch. She briefly wondered if she was still in Phobos's dream world. This was going better than she had expected. There was no way this was real. It couldn't be. Styx wandered into the kitchen. Oedipus's appearance had offered enough of a distraction that the hallucination seemed minor and easily ignored for now. She opened a few cabinets.
Do you like berry tea, Ari?
There was no response at first. Styx shrugged and got to work brewing some of the demonic beverage. Her attention was taken as she heard a scream and ran back into the main room, gasping as she witnessed Oedipus stabbing herself through the leg with deceit.
Erebus, what in the name of hell are you doing?
She recoiled slightly, seeing the pain and fear on Oedipus's face.
I'm still in a dream. I have to be. This isn't real.
She stood up, stumbling to the side a bit and pulled the seat back out of her leg, going to impale it again. Phobos made a move.
Stop.
The metal puppet stopped instantly, metal claws still reaching out across the table. Styx acted quickly, grabbing Oedipus's sword and throwing it across the room before wrapping Oedipus in a tight hug.
This isn't a dream, Eri. I promise.
At that moment, the cabin's door swung open again, and the one and only corrupted Fallen raised a pouch full of warpstone.
Styx, I'm home.
Her eyes widened, seeing Oedipus's stabbed form and Styx comforting her.
I am not high enough for this.
Chapter 48. Uninvited Guests. In any other situation, Evelyn would be highly suspicious of Oedipus's motives, yet they were both dark saints. Evelyn knew how much Oedipus would stall to make sure she wasn't pulled into the aftershocks of his stupid schemes. Therefore, seeing the Saint of Deception here, terrified and stabbing herself, believing everything to be a dream, that was enough to garner a bit of trust. After managing to calm down the Dark Saint and treating her wound, Styx made tea for all of them. Oedipus laid on the couch with Evelyn sitting at the far end, watching her cautiously. Styx sat on a separate comfy chair, and Phobos lay in a crumpled heap in the middle of the floor. Evelyn turned to Styx.
So, how'd she get here again?
Styx shrugged slightly.
You'll have to ask her. All I know is I sensed her out along the river, so I sent Phobos to go get her.
Styx gripped a tea-filled mug with both hands.
Then Cagliostro showed up. I couldn't stay there any longer.
Oedipus pushed herself up to a slight sitting position, looking between Styx and Evelyn.
I already knew that Cagliostro could care less about us as long as his own plans were forwarded. I went along with it because I thought I could keep myself alive. After he killed Ignis, and then that explosion incident with you, Styx, I realized I didn't have much time left.
Oedipus pulled her good leg up and hugged her knee.
I burned down my hovel and fled to the one place I thought I could feel safe. Probably would have had better luck staying in Hell's Gate. Why didn't you go find Zoe?
Oedipus's look was enough of an answer for Evelyn to look sheepishly at the floor.
Right, yeah, she'd probably kill you on sight.
Styx stood up, placing her tea on the table.
I can't claim my cabin is the safest place in hell for you, but as the
She hesitated for a moment.
Queen of Souls, it's my duty to make sure the denizens of hell are cared for.
Phobos let out a cackling wheeze as he clanked to his feet, looking at Oedipus once, then lumbering down a hallway deeper into the cabin. Oedipus waited for his clunking to fall silent.
Where's he going?
Evelyn shrugged and put her feet on the table, crushing a warpstone.
Cassie, you forget that Zoe started the war by jamming a black warpstone into Petra's son and using that to mind control him. She didn't just say, we should just start a war. She did some fucked up shit to start that war. Consider Phobos like our guard dog. Anyway, it's getting late and you're injured. You can sleep in one of my extra bedrooms. I appreciate it.
Styx clenched her hands at her sides for a moment before turning to the fallen on the couch. Evelyn waved her hand dismissively.
I'll sleep on the couch.
She smiled reassuringly.
Besides, if Cad comes back, I'll act as a final line of defense if Phobos gets taken out.
Styx nodded, then walked over to help Oedipus stand.
Sleep well, Ev.
A few hours later, Styx lay in the middle of her bed on top of the covers. The warpstone fixture on the ceiling illuminated the entire room with its gentle white glow. The hallucinations had been staved off due to the stress and focus of Oedipus's appearance. But now that things were calming down, they'd begun to plague the Watcher again. They'd been mild so far, only a misshapen shadow sitting in the corners of her vision and disappearing when she looked directly at it. Styx let out a sigh and closed her eyes to sleep. She wasn't sure how much time had passed, but when her mismatched eyes opened again, the lights had dimmed somewhat. Styx sat up and yawned, then froze. She heard footsteps. Her human ears and wolf ears both strained to hear. Styx's heart leapt into her throat as she made out slow, heavy footsteps of armored boots. Oedipus had arrived wearing leather boots. Evelyn randomly switched between boots and sandals, and Phobos scratched at the floor with his claws as his puppet body walked. These armored boots were none of them. Styx shook her head slightly. It was a hallucination, obviously. That didn't stop her heart rate from increasing as she heard the boots echo closer and closer before stopping right outside her door. Before she realized what she was doing, she called out.
Hello?
She heard the sound of someone being startled, and true terror filled her. This was no hallucination. Styx practically leapt out of bed and grabbed Soulblight from where the scythe leaned against the wall.
Phobos? Evelyn?
The door opened slowly and a bloody sword came into view, followed moments later by its wielder. Styx's stance faltered as the true Queen of Hell faced her with a blank expression.
The guard dog is dead, and your precious angel has had her wings clipped.
Underneath all of her terror, Styx was slightly confused. As the first demon, Zoe's regeneration was the fastest of all demonkin. As such, she felt no need to wear armor, so why the armored boots? Why?
Salem was a fool. You? A queen? Give me a break. Aren't queens supposed to be beautiful?
Styx froze. That was Evelyn's voice emanating from out in the hall somewhere. It was followed by an annoyed whine.
Zoe, come back already. It's lonely and cold in here.
Zoe smirked, staring into Styx's eyes as she replied.
1 second, darling. Just dealing with the trash.
Zoe giggled.
Nox is right. What was I thinking, dating a lowly watcher?
Time seemed to speed up as tears came to Styx's eyes. The Watcher lunged forward, at first reaching out with her left hand, purple flame dominating green, but she stopped short, instead swinging her scythe. The blade cleaved through Zoe and she fell in half, turning to shadow, then nothing. Styx breathed heavily. Even now, you still have feelings for her. You could never truly bring yourself to kill her. Styx turned round quickly, raising her scythe.
Shut up!
She gasped. She was standing back in Mirka, her scythe shoving Evelyn against the wall. Evelyn struggled feebly against the hurdle as it slowly crushed her throat. Styx quickly backed away, throwing Soulblight to the ground and crouching by Evelyn as the fallen slumped to the ground.
Ev?
And yet your feelings for the fallen remain repressed. You should tell her the truth, Styx.
Shut up, leave me alone.
Salem's chuckle echoed through the room. I wish I could.
Huh?
Styx screamed loudly as she felt someone grab her shoulder. She blinked and found herself back in her cabin.
Whoa, 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 calm down, it's just me.
Styx quickly looked around. Evelyn had been the one to grab her and by the looks of it, Styx had sleepwalked out of her room, dragging a scythe behind her. Styx cleared her throat and leaned Soulblight against the wall, sighing.
I had a nightmare.
Evelyn hesitated for a moment, then hugged her.
Must have been pretty bad. You were talking to yourself, and, well...
Evelyn indicated the hall.
Walking around.
Styx exhaled softly, then grabbed Evelyn's hand.
There's something I need to tell you.
Chapter 49. Watcher and Fallen. Styx dragged Evelyn out through the back door of the cabin. The rear of the cabin was arguably more beautiful than the front. A few blightwood and darkwood trees dotted the property, and a few lounging chairs sat on the bank of the River of Souls. The reverse waterfall that led over the mountains and into the Stormlands was visible in the distance. The souls of the river, tormented, bored, or otherwise, were silent here. Styx pulled Evelyn far enough into the sparse woods to be out of earshot of anyone that could be listening from the cabin, mostly Oedipus. Styx took a deep breath.
The nightmare I had last night was...
Styx crossed her arms and looked to the side.
It made me realize some things about how I feel, and...
Styx clenched her teeth.
This is hard.
Evelyn smirked and put an arm on the watcher's shoulder.
Take your time.
Styx nodded and took a deep breath.
I still have feelings for Zoe, but...
Styx uncrossed her arms, clenching her hands at her sides.
There's someone else that I care about more. Someone that's been by my side since the beginning, and who I'm willing to die to protect.
Styx shook her head slightly, then stared into Evelyn's yellow eyes. Styx swallowed.
I love you.
Tears began to flow down Evelyn's cheeks, and she smiled brightly.
Did I say something wrong?
Evelyn leaned forward and kissed Styx deeply on the lips, wrapping her arms around the watcher. After a few moments, they pulled away from each other.
Of course not, Wolfie. I'm just really happy. I never even dreamed that you returned my feelings. I love you so much, Styx.
Oedipus leaned away from the corner of the cabin she was peeking round and sighed.
And here I thought Keg filmed us with all the screaming.
Oedipus turned to walk back round to the front, but stopped as Phobos's metal puppet body crawled slowly down the wall, then stood to its full height in front of her. She looked up into the metal jaws and beady red eyes, an involuntary shudder running through her.
Did you want something, Phobos?
Phobos gripped her skull and none too gently pulled her into the shadows. As her vision blackened, she would hear the true voice of Phobos whispering in her ear.
What are your true intentions, dark saint of deception?
Chapter 50. Dreams. While Oedipus could not see, she could still sense things shifting just beyond her eyelids as Phobos sifted through her thoughts. When everything came to a stop, she opened her eyes, gasping slightly as she found herself in her seat at the Dark Council. Based on the conversation, it was just after the soul bomb. Phobos let out a wheezing snicker as Cagliostro idly mentioned just how easily he could have killed them all. Oedipus remembered her fear and distrust as the realization set in on just how few dark saints were left there. Only her and Nox. The vision shifted to Oedipus's escape, burning down her own cabin in an attempt to trick Cagliostro, shifting a final time to her trek to Styx's cabin. The sheer terror she felt that Cagliostro could find her at any time. She fell to her knees, breathing heavily, looking up as the dark humanoid silhouette of Phobos's nightmare form walked up to her and held out its hand to her.
You feared him from the very beginning, didn't you?
Oedipus took his hand and he helped her stand. She sighed softly.
Of course I did. I didn't want to die.
She gasped as her vision was forced into darkness again. But she could hear metal clanking as Phobos was walking around in front of her. She heard the last thing she'd ever expect to hear from the demonic scarecrow. A sigh. The next thing she knew, she had been thrust back out into hell. She turned quickly towards the metal puppet as it wheezed quietly, then began to chuckle as it stood to its full height, towering over her. Oedipus shivered involuntarily as Phobos's claw came to rest on her shoulder, but did not grip.
Consider your lucky day. You have my trust.
Phobos let out one more wheeze, then stepped back, crouching back down and disappearing into the shadows. Oedipus finally relaxed with a long sigh.
That means a lot to me, Phobos. Thank you.
A few hours later, Evelyn and Oedipus sat at the dining table within the cabin while Styx did her best to cook something.
Sure you don't want me to do it?
Styx shook her head.
I can handle it.
Evelyn nodded slowly, then stood up and walked up to the wolf-eared demon, putting her arms around her.
Is my queen sure?
Styx playfully slapped the fallen's hands, laughing a little.
I don't think I could call myself a good queen if I can't even cook my own meals. That's what servants are for.
Evelyn finger-gunned Oedipus.
Exactly!
Evelyn relented but sat back down and rested one arm over the back of her chair.
I get it, though.
Styx smiled slightly, listening to Oedipus and Evelyn chatter idly while she cooked. After a while she heard footsteps behind her, causing an involuntary shudder. She tried to ignore them, even as they walked right up behind her and cold air breathed against her ear. She whispered softly to herself.
You're not going to ruin this for me, Shadow.
Even with distorted beings watching her through the window, she eventually managed to cook the hell equivalent of a salad and some baked potatoes, passing out portions, then sat next to Evelyn.
Hope you like it. Why wouldn't I like something you made?
The fallen angel leaned over and kissed Styx on the cheek.
Dig in, Airy.
Several days after the grand feast at Frosthold, Modigan still had not felt the experience of sleep, and at this point, her body was rebelling against her. Her soul core beat rapidly as she struggled to keep her eyes open, but eventually, sleep indeed took her. She'd never had a dream before, since she'd seen a crystal for most of her existence, but she understood the concept well enough. Although this seemed more like a glimpse into the past, it was a weird perspective, able to see in almost all directions as her crystallized form bounced against Zoe's chest. Queen of Hell walked up to an angel that had its back to her, gazing into the scrying pool behind the obsidian throne.
This is Petra's son.
No. Your Grace, what exactly am I supposed to be looking at?
Oh, you'll see in a sec.
In a quick motion, Zoe drove a black warpstone into the back of the angel's skull. The vision changed suddenly. Monaghan was high above, watching the battle of the Dark Saints to overthrow their hellish queen. Monaghan did not recall being present, but shifting her strange gaze, found that she was high in the rafters, gripped tightly in Styx's hand as the Watcher observed the battle with tears and horror in her eyes. Styx let out a gasp as Zoe's head was cleaved clean off by a lucky strike. But that horror turned to relief as the severed head turned to ash, and a new one manifested from a blob of blood back on Zoe's neck. As she finished regenerating, she looked much angrier than she had a moment ago.
You're going to regret doing that, Salem.
The dream of the past shifted once again as Styx stood alone on her boat, contemplating wearing the essence of apocalypse, only being stopped by the sudden intervention of Evelyn.
Don't. I might kill you if you put it on.
More than likely.
I can feel its power even when I'm in essence, Ev.
Monaghan watched the fallen step forward.
If you kill yourself, what will Zoe do without you?
Monaghan frowned. What did that mean? Was Styx not the upstart queen trying to usurp the throne? The next thing Monaghan knew, she was back in the tent, her mind a swirling whirlwind of conflicting thoughts.
What did you mean?
Morrigan ignited her hand, looking at the shifting green and purple flame with the red at its core. A single thought occurred to her, but she shook her head and stood up.
No, it is a dream, nothing more. It has no meaning.
She stepped out of the tent. It was time to get some of the rogue Gedonite clans under control to aid Zoe. Chapter 51. The Crystal Angel. 2 battle lines of Gedonites haphazardly lined up in the snow, too far for premature combat, but close enough that they could still attempt to throw axes and rock-packed snowballs along with their insults back and forth. The only thing holding back the inevitable slaughter was Olaf, and whoever led the United Bloodletter and Ice Children clans. Morrigan was frankly surprised that these savages had the self-control to not charge at each other immediately. Olaf walked up to her. "We're outnumbered, Morrigan." The Immortal King chuckled. "That'll just inspire the lads to greater feats. You have wings. If you can get to whomever they've got leading both clans together, you can cause some infighting and make this easier for us." Morrigan nodded.
Noted. Thank you for the advice, Olaf.
The Gedonite king grinned and clenched his fist in front of him. "We'll crush the servants of the upstart and return Gedoni to the united allegiance of the Bloodied One." He turned Oh dear.
You see it too?
Hopefully I have the energy for this. Sip of tea. Just a moment.
Take a big gulp of tea, you're gonna need it.
He turned to face the rowdy horde of warriors behind him, inhaling heavily before speaking with the authority of a king ready to die for the cause. "Gedonites, today you fight for your own. This is nothing new to us after the battles fought to unite our clans. Once again, Gedoni grows unstable, and it falls to us to reunite it again." He laughed heartily. "Ha ha ha! We'll show the upstart that Gedoni cannot be controlled so easily. Slaughter the traitors, stain the cold snow beneath with their blood, and leave the corpses for the carrion. What are you all waiting for? Go!" Battle cries rose on both sides, and the barely contained wrath of the Gedonites was unleashed. Swords, axes, spears, all manner of weapons were raised high or sent spiraling through the air at the opposing force as 2 sides charged at each other. Morrigan tried to skirt the edges of the battle, looking for the rival commander, but the lines broke faster than she had expected. As intelligent as the Gedonites were, they were still slaughter-seeking raiders at the end of the day. A burly and armored Gedonite chuckled darkly as he charged Morrigan, double-bladed axe raised above his head. Morrigan simply held out her sword, a red flame igniting at its tip. The Gedonite was unable to slow down in time and impaled himself, the sword blade piercing armor, flesh, and bone like butter, whilst Morgan sidestepped and allowed his momentum to carry him forward, face down into the snow as she twirled, ripping her sword back out. Morrigan smirked, then thought to herself, if she claimed the souls of these soldiers, her outnumbered force would come to better rival these rebels. While she put a lot of faith in the Gedonites, they were also fighting themselves, not a weaker force such as Midheim or Sigmara. She was concerned about getting killed, but she honestly wasn't even sure if she could actually die, considering what she truly was. With that in mind, she hesitantly began wading into the main conflict, cutting down any that were quicker on the draw than she, but grabbing onto and claiming any she could reach. The plan was working rather well, until the back of a spear slammed into the side of her head and sent her spiraling into the ground. She quickly rolled over onto her back, gasping and raising her sword as an axe blade sailed down towards her. She closed her eyes tightly, hearing something shatter loudly. As her eyes opened again, Morrigan was horrified to see that while the axe had fallen short, It had shattered her leg into blue and cyan fragments, with crystalline fractures running up the rest of her limb, and blood oozing thickly from within. Her crystal core beat hard in her chest as terror filled her. Was she about to turn back into a crystal? Or was it just how her body was created? She didn't have much time to think about it, as the Geronite came at her again, seeking to rectify his earlier mess. Morrigan's hand ignited with a red flame, and almost unconsciously, she thrusted her hand out towards the man, a wispy red tendril shooting out and slipping up into the warrior's helmet. He gripped his head, axe crunching down onto the snow as he yelled out in agony, his very blood beginning to boil. A few moments later, there was a sort of popping noise as blood leaked from every orifice, the tall raider falling backwards into the snow. Morrigan looked at her hand.
Wow, not sure how I did that. Fuck, wrong accent. Well, I'm not sure how I did that.
An idea came to her, and she shoved her jagged legs stump into the pooling blood. A red flame ignited within the cracks as flesh, bone, and her crystalline interior reconstituted, until she was whole and malleable again. The crystal demon angel quickly rose back to her feet, turning to impale a Geronite in the knee, giving her more time to claim him before he could resist. This wasn't going to be as hard as she thought. Hours later, the fight continued, and while the rebel clans were slowly becoming outnumbered, the fact that the rebels still held the Demon Queen's packs was making it quite the slog. Morrigan had boiled the blood of a few more warriors just to get past them faster, but found her new skill was quite taxing on her energy and not something she could keep up forever. She eventually found a sort of clearing, coming face to face with a tall raider, armor as thick as Koss's, and a gigantic two-handed maul in his grip. Without really thinking about it, she yelled out,
Face me, honorable warrior.
The savage faced her, a grin sliding across his face and his beady eyes peering at Morrigan from beneath his horned helm. You, little angel girl, you jest surely. He laughed at her. Morrigan smirked.
Afraid to get your ass beat by little angel girl, then?
The man growled. Fine. When I crush you into the snow, I'll offer your soul to the Soul Queen. He faced her. I am Tristmere, warlord of the Ice Children. Morrigan was slightly surprised as she was getting an actual proper duel, even more surprised that the battle waging around them cleared out a bit, offering an actual arena, the walls being the bodies of Geronites fighting around her. She coughed once, then got into a battle stance, words coming to her mind to return respectfully.
My name is Morrigan, the Crystal Angel. When you fall, I will give you a proper Geronite burial, sailing into the frost sea with a burning longboat piled high with all the treasure you accumulated as a raider.
Tristmere's smile softened a bit. May the best warrior win, lass. They began to circle each other slowly. Then suddenly Tristmere lunged forward, attempting to impale Morrigan with a spike at the end of his maul. She managed to dodge, blocking the follow-up blow with gritted teeth. The maul's weight was almost enough to knock her off her feet, but she held strong, counter-striking, wincing as her thin sword glanced off the heavy armor of the Geronite. The duel went on and on, as Morrigan's sword could not pierce Tristmere's armor, and his slow, heavy maul could not land a good enough hit on the smaller and more agile Morrigan. Eventually, Morrigan grew cocky, which started her downfall. An unexpected swing shattered both of her legs out from under her, spreading crystal chunks and thick, oozy blood across the snow. Before she'd even landed, a follow-up blow uppercutted her backwards, shattering part of her face and revealing the hollow crystalline interior of her body. She slammed into the snow, breathing heavily.
I don't want to die. Not here.
Tristmia curb stomped her chest, shattering it open, allowing the crystal core within her to fall out. The tri-colored flame of red, purple, and green still lit brightly within the transparent blue, refused fragments of her original self. Tristmia looked at it, distracted. In his moment of lowered guard, Morgan's resolve strengthened. The top of the orb core shattered, and the tri-flame grew into a blazing inferno. Tristmia stepped back, but not fast enough, as 3 tendrils, shifting between all 3 colors, grew from the cracked core, wrapping around his neck and his arms, raising him off the ground. Morgan's shattered body laughed as her eyes flickered through the same hues.
You served the upstarts and offered your blood to her, and now I will drench this battlefield in your blood as an offering to the Bloodied One.
Witch! She-devil! Demon! The middle tendril cut him off as it slid into his mouth, plunging downward into his body as he began to choke. The warriors around them that took notice stopped their combat, watching in horror. The side tendrils wrapped tighter and ripped Tristmia's arms off, blood flowing like a geyser out onto the snow, where the puddling ichor moved it with a mind of its own to Morrigan's body, reconstituting her. Finally, she was whole again as she stood, except for the hole in her chest. She giggled softly as she walked to her softly pulsing core and picked it up, the tendrils disappearing. She placed the core back into her body for a moment, but hesitated, and then raised it high above her head. As she suspected, her nature as the essence of apocalypse boosted her powers. A wave of green shot out from the core like an order, and in the next moment, the bloodletters in the Ice Children belonged to her. With the battle over, she stuck her core back into herself, the blood on the ground reconstituting her chest and her clothes as she walked over to Olaf. He gripped her shoulder with a hearty chuckle. "Ye are truly a servant of the Fox. Your power is unmatched. We are blessed by the Bloodied One to have your aid, Morrigan." He stepped in front of her to address the Gedonites. "The Ice Children and the Bloodletters have once again been united under the banner of the Ever-King and the Dark Saint of Blood. Gather your spoils and rest. Tomorrow, we march and take the next clan, and within the month, we retake Iron Keep." Cheers and yells of agreement echoed loudly, and Morrigan smiled.
That was kind of fun.
She gripped her sword tightly, eagerly looking forward to the next slaughter.
To give context for those that don't understand, it was an implied thing at some point that Styx can influence souls she has control over. So that has been put into play here. Morgan thinks Styx is the bad guy, so she has influenced Olaf, whose soul she has claimed, to think Styx is the bad guy.
Curiouser and curiouser. Chapter 52. A Meal and a Visit. As Morrigan blazed a trail of subjugation and bloodshed across Gedony, Styx remained at her cabin. Oedipus, going by the alias of Eddie now, proved to be a good help around the place, and having another person around the cabin helped Styx's mental state, however little. Eddie had been with him a few weeks now, and she seemed very happy to have what almost felt like a family. Styx and Evelyn sat side by side in the kitchen while Eddie took a crack at cooking. She turned out to be pretty good at making great meals from a few ingredients, as she created a big pot of hellmeat stew. Evelyn instinctively refused to eat until she saw both Styx and Eddie take big spoonfuls. Eventually, Styx spoke up.
Where'd you learn to cook, Eri?
The ex-Dark Saint hesitated for a moment.
Hillsgate.
Evelyn glanced up from her stew.
Did you live there?
Eddie nodded slowly, a nervous expression on her face.
I did. A small hovel in the back alleys of the short district. Ah, the slums. Damn. I never realized just how close you lived to Nox's meeting chamber. No wonder you always got there first.
Evelyn sighed.
I used to think you're a bad person, Erebus, but I don't know. Having you here, I'm seeing another side of you.
Eri nodded slowly with a sheepish smile.
I am the saint of deception, Ev. My entire persona was a lie, and my greatest lie was to myself. I just wanted to be useful and stay alive.
She sighed.
In truth, I'm a coward. Hey, cowardice isn't inherently a bad trait, Eri. Salem mentioned something about your greatest lie before. That doesn't surprise me. He was always far more calculating than he let on. He saw through me like glass quite often.
Styx idly looked towards the ceiling, a mismatched gaze widening as she saw Letta's distorted, headless corpse pressed against the ceiling and facing her. The hallucination's limbs bent backwards unnaturally to anchor it there. Styx looked back down quickly, but it was too late. She'd already acknowledged it, and she could hear it scuttling towards the wall. The Watcher breathed heavily as she stood up.
Writing Styx's hallucinations is so fucking fun. I'm gonna go to my room.
Evelyn stood up as well, reached out to grasp her hand.
Are you okay?
Styx shook her head, pulling her hand from the corrupted angel's grip and quickly turning to head to her room, breaking out into a sprint as she heard Letta's body fall to the floor and chase after her. Styx held in a scream, but her body still shook with terror as she reached her room and slammed the door, sliding to the floor and hugging her knees as she listened to footsteps pace back and forth just outside. Evelyn sat back down and put her head in her hands, sighing.
Sion's blade really did a number on her, didn't it?
Evelyn nodded, looking upset.
I want to be there for her and help her, but I can't fucking protect her when she's the only one seeing things.
A knock came at the cabin door, and Evelyn pushed herself to her feet.
You can do the dishes, Eri.
The deception demon nodded, watching Evelyn walk to the door. Evelyn stopped in front of it, crushing a green warpstone before pulling it open. In front of her stood the dark winged angel Calico. She peered over Evelyn's shoulder.
Is Styx here? I need to talk to her.
Evelyn hesitated, gripping the door frame, then sighed.
She just had an episode, so she's locked in her room.
Calico hesitated for a few moments.
I am not sure how much longer I can keep Zoe away from here. She had a change of heart. She really wants to see Styx, and she wants to pick up some of her stuff. Not sure to what purpose.
Evelyn suddenly seemed very nervous.
Ah, I see. Well,
She bit her lip.
Look, Alex.
Evelyn's nails dug into the doorway as her yellow eyes looked away.
Styx confessed to me a few weeks ago. Not even mentioning the fact Salem's madness is still hitting her pretty hard, and she's still trying to figure out how to get on the throne without Salem's advice. She's under a lot of stress, and if Zoe shows up here...
She drifted off, Calico nodding in understanding.
I'll stall her for as long as I can, but you two will have to figure out something.
She saw Eri standing in the hallway behind Evelyn, and her eyes widened.
What in the nine hells is she...
Evelyn blocked her view.
It's a long story, but she gave up on the Dark Saints. Cagliostro chased her all the way here.
Calico clenched her fingers a bit and sighed.
I trust Salem. I'll trust that Erebus isn't causing trouble here. She wants somewhere to be safe. Styx trusts her, so I trust her. Besides, if she really isn't lying, we both know Phobos will rip her into a nightmare before she pulls off anything. Kinda surprised you recognize her human form. Kinda surprised you recognize her human form. You're a high saint, not a dark saint. I can sense her.
Calico crossed her arms.
I'll do my best to delay Zoe, but you guys need to figure out something. We will.
Calico nodded.
I gotta go then. There's all kinds of stuff going on right now, and I have to go see Petra. Good luck.
She smiled at Eri.
Good luck to you as well, Erebus. Thanks.
Evelyn nodded and closed the door, sighing as she pressed her back against it.
Shit never ends around here, does it?
And that brings us to chapter 53, A Moment Betrayed. Zoe, would you mind terribly if we pick this up next week?
No worries, man.
I'm sorry to cut this off so early. Normally we go for about 2 or 3 hours chat, but I could sense myself yawning between between a few sentences, and I just
No worries at all. You're tired. You need to go sleep.
Yeah, I don't want to be yawning and trying to force a sentence and it just sounding strange. I'm sure you all understand. Tell you what, Zoe, I'm just going to raid everybody into you, and just feel free to continue on as you like it.
Sounds good.
Yeah. All right, everybody, let me set this up. Okay, raid created. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us again. Sorry to keep this so short. I'll see everybody on Saturday for Goose Goose Duck with Project Astadia. I'm Lord Rexworth, wishing you all the best, and God bless.
You get a nice long sleep, friend.
Will do. Will do.